Appreciate the reporting. I'm joined now by CNN national security commentator and former chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Mike Rogers. Nice to have you here, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Poppy. Great to be here.
I wonder if you agree with the president's assessment this morning that North Korea, in his words, is no longer a nuclear threat. I mean, does he risk a former President George W. Bush mission accomplished moment with a statement like that?
Very much so. We are a long way from North Korea not being a nuclear threat. Now, there were some good things that happened. I mean, I think the fact that we have dialogue. Remember, 6 months ago, we couldn't even pick up the phone and talk to anybody. We had no way to de-escalate any activity with North Korea. So all of that has been overcome. Now we have that. We have some access into North Korea. All of that is good. I do think the president needs to be extremely cautious about his sense of exuberance over this one meeting. We have seen this movie before, and they tend not to follow through. So we've got a lot of work to do yet.
So talk about the work then that Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is doing in Seoul right now, will do in Beijing when he goes there later this week to meet with President Xi Jinping. I mean, how does he clean up what was at the least a surprise to the South Koreans that there would be no more joint military exercises?
And by the way, this is their worst fear. So last fall, I was in South Korea, talked to a lot of their national security leadership. And the one thing that they kept saying over and over is they didn't want what they call Korea passing. And Korea passing is, they believe, is the United States, China, or other nations or other NATO nations making a decision on what happens with North Korea without including them. So you can imagine, I can only imagine what's going on in those meetings today when they find out by opening up the newspaper or reading a Twitter account that the military exercises that have been going on for decades in preparation of a North Korean invasion are no longer on the table. I am sure, as they would say, he's got some explaining to do.
Couple that with the fact that, and not surprisingly, but as Will Ripley just reported, North Korean state media is completely downplaying the denuclearization part of these talks. I mean, that's clearly the message that the Kim regime wants out there. But if the hope is ultimately for the world to get these two men, President Trump and Chairman Kim, on the same page in some sort of agreement, what does it tell us that the message in North Korea now is nothing like the message in the United States?
Again, we have seen this movie before, so what they like to do is promise a lot and deliver very little. If you recall, Condoleezza Rice did a deal there and promised, I think, 60 tons of food or something like that because they were starving. They said they would reform themselves and be good actors. None of that happened. Same under Obama, and now we're seeing the same thing. Now, the only difference here is that we have this dialogue that we've never had before with North Korea. So I would say let's be cautiously optimistic about that piece, but let's push back on the president saying, hey, this is a done deal and we should be excited about it. We should be nowhere near excited.
But you know, frequent Trump critic, former DNI James Clapper, applauded the president somewhat on this last night, telling Anderson we're in a much better place than we were 6 or 8 months ago. I wonder how much you believe it is necessary for the president's team to get on the same page. And by that, I mean John Bolton, Secretary Mattis, and also Secretary Pompeo, because we know that they come at this from very different perspectives, especially Pompeo and Bolton.
Well, and I think this has been one of the weaknesses of the president and their foreign policy is there has been so many different messages coming out of the White House. Even the vice president went up on Capitol Hill and said, no, we'll still have some training. And then the White House corrected.
War games.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and let me tell you, as a former military guy, these training exercises are critically important. They're not games. They're not meant to be provocative. But if you're going to have two military forces joining together to accomplish any mission, it is really, really difficult to do. And so that's why they do these training things. This is why they exercise those muscles to make sure that's still there. And it demonstrates to North Korea, hey, we still have this capability to surge troops into the peninsula anytime we want and work with our South Korean allies. So and by the way, we do this in NATO as well to push back on the Russians. We want to make sure they understand that we have these commitments. So that provocative language, I think, needs to change a little bit on the president, and all of them need to be on the same page. If we're going to have success in any negotiations with North Korea, we all have to be saying the same thing.
Quick yes or no answer. Is America safer today than it was on Monday?
I think yes. Absolutely. I think there's no way you could say that we're not. We're in dialogue. We have a phone. Somebody will answer our call to kind of de-escalate things. That in and of itself was a big step.
Chairman Rogers, appreciate your time this morning. Thanks for being here.